Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. Probably a more significant program than most because we're already on top. Well, we're into the NFL season, regular season. That real rise you up out of your chair and get excited about the Eagles. Well, horrible game. Horrible game.
Well, I'll tell you something that did get me very excited. The shitbag that just keeps on giving, and you had a squirrel run past your window.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, this is nature, baby. Yeah. Go ahead.
That squirrel has more intelligence than Colin Kaepernick, or the executive at Nike that put that sorry son of a bitch and painted him as a hero. Oh, he's a hero. He's standing up for oppressed people who are being killed by police. Yeah, you know how many fucking unarmed black people get killed every year? About 18. Same number that gets hit by fucking lightning. Lightning!
Lightning. It's an interesting
They have a greater chance of wading into the ocean and getting their ass chewed off by a fucking shark.
Now let me ask you a question. Do they actually keep statistics on African-American fatalities by lightning?
Actually, they do. They have separated those out by color. So, or at least,
I wonder how many Jews
you have Asians, you have
Jews,
blacks, and Africans. You get lumped in with the white people.
Oh, really? That's too bad. Get out of the way. You're not going out there. God, no. Look at that lightning.
So you stand as much chance as the priest in Caddyshack of being hit by lightning.
Okay. That's reassuring to me.
Damn you!
Rat farts! Yeah, I think that was his last words.
Getting back to the shitbag and this quote that he tweeted out as part of their ad campaign. Can you believe that any fucking group, actually the only fucking group that would pay this man any amount of money to do a goddamn thing, believes in child slave fucking labor? Real children, ages 8 to 14.
All right, I want you to put.
Having to work 60,
do you have a pen? Do you have a pen or a pencil?
I have a pen.
Okay, mark down next to write down Nike child labor 1. Okay, and just put that down. Okay, I'm doing this for a reason, so my memory won't fail me. Go ahead.
They also have the worst record when it comes to female labor in all of Southeast Asia.
All right.
And the Pacific Islands. Wherever they have a factory. You know what part of their deal is? In Vietnam, they fire women who get pregnant. They'll fire you for any goddamn reason.
Okay.
And they're also paying these people what my grandfather made in the 1930s working for fucking Farmall, putting tractors together. That's not good. You don't want to be making 55 cents an hour.
Okay.
Meanwhile, when they sell their goddamn shoes, guess how much they cost? Oh, well, we're going to sell Air Jordans for $149 fucking dollars.
We're talking about Nike, right? You know, Nike is doing this for money. I was reading a study earlier that they're actually losing money all the way around the world for every reason that Brian just said, Brian Holman. And they said that Adidas is actually outside the United States is the most popular brand of style of shoe and apparel that every other country wears, including Mexico, South America, Europe, and all that. Nike, because of their sweatshop labors and their high prices, they're only popular in the United States, like the Xbox. The Xbox is only popular in the United States.
Right.
So the United States is only making money, and Nike's losing a lot of money. Adidas is kicking their ass, and all these other companies that are making apparel more cheaper, like the jerseys, like Brian Holman said, and the shoes and all that. So Nike's just doing this in as a marketing way to try to make more money in the United States, because they know that vulnerable, and I don't want to say ignorant, but people who aren't really aware of the situation, especially young minorities like blacks and Hispanics, will go and buy their products, mainly blacks, because 90% of Nike's product sales come from African-American males ages 5 to 34. So I wanted to add that.
All right. Any other points you wanted to make, Brian?
Yeah, I want to get into this whole sacrifice shit. Colin Kaepernick has never had to sacrifice a motherfucking thing in his entire goddamn life. He was adopted and raised by lower upper class white fucking people. He is the epitome of goddamn privilege, yet he's sacrificing. He went from one multi-million-dollar goddamn contract from football to another one with Nike. Don't give me that fucking sacrifice shit.
Brian, you are aware
from the goddamn hood.
You are aware that his lawyers, his agents, his marketing team is working relentless hours to try to get this man paid. He's now a social activist or whatever. This is all about money for Colin. This was all a marketing scheme to make money.
No. My point is, he is not the same as oh God, who's that linebacker for the Denver Broncos that played at Missouri? Shit. Anyway, that's a real no. Von Miller's from Texas.
Indiana. Texas, is he? Right.
Yeah, he's another one from Texas.
New England coffee. Those are true American heroes to me, that sacrificed everything and went to the military.
Well, right. And, the other thing that really pisses me off is this whole fucking oh, well, you owe us reparations shit. Where the fuck are my reparations? My family actually fought in the Civil War to free their stupid ass. Yet I'm blamed for slavery that ended 100 and something years ago. They aren't slaves. There is nothing in professional athletics. You're making multi-million dollars. You can fucking go fucking dig ditches for $15 an hour, $18 an hour, and find out what real labor is. Or be like or go back to fucking living in the hood, slinging dope. I don't give a shit.
All right. Let me ask a few questions and we'll finish up this piece of the program because we got to talk about the Cleveland Browns. That's what people come here to listen about. Question one, and I've prepared a list of questions because I knew what would come up. By the way, the reason I had you write down child labor is score 1 point for Brian Holman there, because what you're going to hear from me is going to be a very different type of argument than what maybe you would expect to, knowing that I am a Democrat. Okay. Not that that means a hell of a lot in 2018. Is Colin Kaepernick better than Brandon Whedon, Deshaun Kaiser, Drew Stanton, Cody Kessler, Peterman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Yes or no?
Could you repeat that question again?
Is Colin Kaepernick better than Brandon Whedon, Deshaun Kaiser, Drew Stanton, Cody Kessler, Nathan Peterman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Colin Kaepernick's better than half the starting quarterbacks in the league. So I'd answer that to your question is yes.
Okay. Brian, do you have an opinion about that? Oh, Brian. Did we lose Brian? Oh, we lost his audio. That's unusual. All right.
He'll come back on.
Yeah, I hope so. Because these were questions that were designed for him.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, okay.
My computer fucking decided to have a schizoid fit.
It's not unusual.
So you were going to say something about
my question is: Colin Kaepernick better than Brandon Whedon, Deshaun Kaiser, Drew Stanton, Cody Kessler, Peterman, et cetera, et cetera? It's a yes or no question.
No.
Okay, he's not better. Okay. So Steven said yes, he's better, and of course he's better than Brandon Whedon and Deshaun Kaiser and Drew Stanton.
Better than half starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, but yeah, all right.
Not if you look at his last season stats through those 12 games. If you compare them to Kaiser's, they're very similar.
Right.
In a 12-game sample.
Yeah, these are questions that are just going to arrange and get to a certain point of view. Did it bother you when NFL owners blackballed Colin Kaepernick?
No.
Okay. When Jerry Jones threatened to fire anyone who didn't stand at attention during the national anthem, did that bother you?
No.
Okay. When Papa John Schnatter, former CEO of Papa John's, publicized his views against the players who were kneeling and put himself as the face of the Papa John's franchise when he was still employed by them, did that bother you?
Minor correction to that. What he said was the national anthem protests were driving down viewership, which were also driving down his business. And
later he did state that it was wrong for the players to be kneeling. Did that bother you?
No, because I believe in that. Right. I believe that that's correct.
All right. When players continued to kneel throughout the season after making their initial statement, did that bother you?
Yes, because it didn't appear that any of them were actually doing anything other than grandstanding and virtue signaling.
All right. When Donald Trump repeatedly tweeted about players kneeling and his anti-NFL and anti-player stance in order to communicate with his political base, did that disturb you or bother you?
No.
Okay. So here's what we have. What we have is it didn't bother you when the NFL owners all passed on Colin Kaepernick and gave their fan bases inferior quarterbacks than Colin Kaepernick to be in backup and even in some instances starting quarterback positions. When Jerry Jones threatened to fire anyone who didn't stand at attention for the national anthem, that didn't bother you, nor did John Schnatter. But when the players continued to kneel during the season, that bothered you. But when Trump repeatedly tweeted about it, that didn't bother you. Let me throw this at you. Seems to me that whatever you agree or disagree with is predicated on a political belief. A, here's the truth. The NFL mishandled the whole goddamn thing from the get-go. All right? You don't grab the bull by the horns, the bull is going to gore you. The NFL was gored by this situation because they were indecisive and did not do what they should have done, as any good business would. That's free. All right, that's the first thing. They let the bull out of the cage, and the bull gored him.
Preach.
Okay, so as a former multi-company owner or radio station owner, would you allow a DJ who was an absolute cancer, whose ratings were mediocre in a given market, would you allow them to remain at your station?
I ran into this.
Or would you get rid of them?
You know, it's an interesting question because I actually faced this with morning. There was one specific afternoon disc jockey who I'm still very friendly with, who just a step too far, and his ratings were tremendous. But you know,
no, I
gave him a wider berth. Let me put it this way. I gave him a wider berth, but when it was apparent that he wasn't going to toe the line, and when he finally said something that was damaging to a business on the air, I terminated him. Okay? That's the case.
So you enacted just like an NFL owner has with Colin Kaepernick.
And with the exception of the fact that the person who was terminated in my business did many things, including going after married women in the building. There were a number of incidents that were throwing a woman out of a moving vehicle. There were lots of things that were shaded in with this decision. It wasn't just one isolated thing. I don't remember Colin Kaepernick ever being in trouble with anyone until he kneeled. I never heard about Colin Kaepernick having any difficulty with an owner or with any of his employers until that moment.
Mr. Moohead, can I add something to
Sure.
what y'all just said?
Please do.
Before I forget, these NFL players don't realize how good they have it because they get the luxury of kneeling without facing termination. If I was at Mr. Moohead's job, a 9-to-5er working at his, let's say he owned a pizza place, and he hired me and Brian, and we kneeled, and customers threatened, saying whatever customers you do accumulate based on you being a small business on the private sector, it would affect your business more than, let's say, the NFL, because they're always going to have that portion of fans that are going to go because they're a larger commodity, they're a larger corporation, and they bring in more money. With the smaller businesses, they couldn't have players, they couldn't have employees kneeling like this. They would terminate you based on that because it would any downsides into their business in terms of the money being lost based on people protesting would put them out of business. So the smaller companies wouldn't prevail in this situation. So these NFL players actually have it better than our 9-to-5ers because they can get away with it.
All right, now I'm going to make a quick work of this. Do you guys believe that the television networks that broadcast the football games, including ESPN and NBC and Fox and CBS, God, I'm old, Fox and CBS exploited this for viewership? Yes or no?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Do you believe that Trump exploited it by strengthening his popularity with his political base by his perpetual tweeting about this? Yes or no?
Yes.
Trump uses tweets and Twitter to get around the fake stream media that that always bastardizes whatever
That's
he says.
not what I asked you. I asked you, do you believe that he exploited this in order to become more popular with his base?
I voted Trump, and I agree. Yes, I agree. Yes to your question.
Yes,
Brian?
he uses it. Yes, he uses Twitter to increase influence with his.
And so he exploited
with the general public.
He exploited the fact that he knew that his base would stand with him against the players kneeling. And so his repeated tweets were an exploitation in order to increase his popularity, correct? That's what politicians do. I'm not going to single him out. I got more ahead of me here.
Obama did the same thing. He used some of the same tactics. You know, it's cool.
All politicians are self-serving.
Bill Clinton does it too. I mean,
do you believe that NFL owners exploited it? Do you think that
behind the scenes, yes.
I mean, based on the position that Jerry Jones, and I use him as an example, that in the state of Texas, you didn't think that wouldn't play well in the state of Texas? Did he exploit? So did Jerry Jones exploit this circumstance in order to connect with his fan base in Texas?
Yes, he did, because he was against the kneeling. And then all of a sudden on that Monday night game against Arizona, he all of a sudden kneeled with the players. And then he was on the front cover of Time magazine. Right. And it said NFL's war against America. I remember that. So the answer
in that instance, I agree with Stephen that that's a yes.
Okay. So I'm going to answer the questions. I believe the NFL mishandled the whole thing. The networks exploited it. Trump exploited it. The NFL owners exploited it. The players exploited it way beyond whatever normal thing. They just kept beating on it and beating on it and beating on it. And they exploited it so that they would have their moment in the sun. And Nike exploited it. What I can't for the life of me imagine is why it's like everybody's exploited it. Why is Nike bothering so many people? And the interesting part of it is that Nike makes a shitty product. It is way overpriced. The people are way underpaid. They are horrible about human rights as a company. They refused to make their products in America when they were offered an opportunity to by your friend Michael Moore, who really was my friend at one time. And Philip Knight just, nah. He gave lip service. Yeah, we would do that. And then nothing happened because, hey, he can get a guy to make shoes for 60 cents overseas. And it's no different than Apple and people jumping out of the fucking windows there in China committing suicide because they're working in a goddamn sweatshop.
Yep, preach.
You bet Nike exploited this, just like the players exploited it, like the owners exploited it, like Trump exploited it. And you know something? It has nothing to do with what's right or what's wrong. It has nothing to do with free speech. It has everything to do with marketing, Players want to market themselves as a union. NFL owners want to exploit this in order to market themselves as a self-contained group of people who are in agreement and can control the destiny of players by blackballing them. Trump exploited it, and it's obvious why he did it is because he needs votes, and the Republicans need votes for the midterm elections. That's obvious. The networks, they could have just ignored the whole thing, but the more they talked about it, the more people got up in arms and social media exploded.
Preach.
This is what it is. This is what our life is right now. Money, money, money. Marketing. And let me tell you something about Nike. They don't give a flying fuck what a fat Jew like me who's 61 years of age, who has busted up legs, gives a shit about. They don't care. They don't care about you, Brian Hallman, because you're too old and you're not the target market. And really what Steven said in the beginning of the program, if you're basically under 25 years of age, if you're a millennial or before, they're the group. Take it from somebody who used to market. We ran contemporary hit radio stations. We know all about marketing from 12 to 34 years of age. We know it inside out. Today's young people are style conscious, and in America, Nike still holds sway. Now, and you're right about the world. You're right about it. It's no different with Apple. You know where Apple's popular? In the United States. What brand is popular overseas?
Samsung.
That is correct. You go anywhere in Asia, man, it's fucking Samsung, man. And ain't Apple. They were giving Apple computers away. They were giving Apple phones away in the Philippines, giving them away.
Yeah.
Although Huawei is gaining on them.
Yeah, right. Chinese, right. Huawei. Company. Yes. And you know something? Marketing is, there's no right or wrong to marketing anymore. All there is getting your face in front of as many people as possible and creating a reaction. And
I'm reminded of an old movie adage: "Bad press is still press."
Yeah, and that's really, you know,
as long as they're talking about you, you're still relevant.
Yeah, you know, what was Noel Coward's comment from so long ago? It was like, there's only one thing. The not being well spoken of, and that's not being spoken of. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. No news is bad news. So, you know, in the end, Nike is doing nothing different. They're just, you know, they believe that the age group that they're interested in, the new group of people who are millennials, that they are faux human rights advocates, or they are, you know, pro sensitivity, and they're likely to side with Colin Kaepernick on this.
It got me revved up. All right, go ahead, Steve, and then I'll go ahead.
No, I said they're targeting to the adults around my age, under 25, because that's what because a lot of us are so politically ignorant and not self-aware of anything. We're easily impressionable. Take advantage of us.
Young people are of a different mindset than I am. And so, you know, and if they feel through their in-house research that people in their target demographic are going to be sympathetic toward Colin Kaepernick, then that's how they're going to sell their product. And it's pathetic because it's just as pathetic as what Trump does. It's just as pathetic as what the networks do, because what gets lost in this is the conversation that we're having. Right or wrong. Okay? I'm an advocate of free speech. but I believe that free speech has its consequences. Mahatma Gandhi can tell you about that.
What has really pissed me off is the denigration of people like Jim Brown, who have spent spent 50 plus years trying to fucking do something in the black community. And because he said, you're not going to disrespect my flag, all of the Stephen A. Smith and all these other talking bobbleheads of color bash him.
Yep.
And if I can bring up the Aretha Franklin funeral for a second, the only one that gets bashed for telling the truth is the pastor that grew up with her down the fucking street.
I already told you the truth about Aretha Franklin. We were up the street from her in Michigan. I can tell you about all the bad checks she bounced. I can tell you all about the financial issues with that woman. Now, it had nothing to do with her talent. It had nothing to do with her popularity in the 60s and the 70s and her designation as the Queen of Soul or her ability as a singer. But there were definite negatives in her character. Of course, those things never come up any more than they come up at John McCain's funeral. Let's be honest. John McCain wasn't that much of a maverick. Let's be honest about this while we're being honest. It's like, I'm sorry he
funded ISIS. He trained, funded, and armed ISIS.
That's correct. If you look at his political record and what he supported, he allowed this lie about weapons of mass destruction to kill our soldiers overseas. The fact of the matter is he wasn't clean. None of them are clean. He added language to legislation that fucked our country. There is no question that he was part of the old boys network. And of course, they're all, and Lindsey Graham's going to go up and speak well of him. And as soon as he speaks well of the dead McCain, then he's going to throw himself at Trump's feet because they're all prostitutes. They're all prostitutes. That's what politicians are. They're whores.
And I got screwed again because Doug Ducey decided to put John Kyle in John McCain's seat. Another fucking old boy.
Well, that's what it is.
Political elite jackass. Instead of saying, no, we're gonna put that seat up on the next ballot as well, which they have plenty of time to do. No, we gotta fuck the people over.
That McCain machine's gonna get behind that guy. The fact of the matter is,
they were best buddies.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's a boys' club.
I've put up with them for 25 years.
This is the microcosm of everything you see in the league today, from sports to everything. The top at the top, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer.
Remember when Dianne Feinstein was considered, look at her. She's the woman in the Senate. It's like, oh, wow, look at her. Or the Congress. Look at,
I'm going to take your fucking guns away. Meanwhile, I'm going to be strapped and I'm going to be surrounded by fucking 87 goons with automatic weapons.
Yeah, but the thing is that she didn't turn out to be any different than the guys. She's just part of that network now. And that's the way everything works. I didn't want to insinuate that I'm happy that John McCain passed away. Horrible thing that anyone would pass away. And that's not a pretty thing to pass away from. But, this going over the top that Aretha was beyond reproach, or that John McCain was beyond reproach, all of this stuff, or that Nike is beyond reproach, or that Colin Kaepernick is beyond reproach, all of this, the followers of each side will vilify one side, they'll support the other side, but the fact of the matter is right and wrong doesn't get into the conversation. The players had a right to kneel. Yes. The NFL had a right as their employers to do something about it and didn't do anything. They wavered. They didn't know what they wanted to do. Then the owners started operating on their political instincts, which are right-leaning, and started making various threats. The league still did nothing. The players' union pushed back. And what we ended up with was a war on our hands, but not even a war of ideas. It was a war of blindness. The fact is, I've told this audience a gazillion times, these sporting events are not what the public needs to see. These types of protests Our athletics, our entertainment should be a break to get away from this kind of shit. These athletes, when they take their helmets and their pads off, are just as well known as when they're in their jerseys. And when they're not playing football, any of them who want to stand up and do something about injustice, they have the opportunity to do that within their communities, within our country. But you know something? Every offseason, they all disappear.
Brian Body Calhoun actually goes back to his community and is active in trying to do something with different programs to try and help people.
Well, Colin Kaepernick is also working with young children too, with how to react with law enforcement and stuff. He's donated to multiple charities. I mean, it takes a lot more than what he's doing, of course.
Every player has a foundation because it's a tax write-off. Let's be honest about that too, because most players' foundations are just horseshit. Now, there are people like LeBron James who are legitimately building things and doing things in their community. There are others, though, who just utilize their foundations as tax dodges. Now, again, my experience in all of these things are that people exploit things for their own benefit, and right and wrong doesn't get into it. I believe the players had the right to kneel. After that, they should have been told, cut this shit out. If you want to go ahead and talk about this during the offseason, that's absolutely fine, but not in the games.
During the week.
Yeah,
during the week at their practice.
I don't even want to see it. No, you know something? I don't even want to see it during the regular season. The regular season is 16 fucking weeks. You can shut your pie hole for 16 weeks and work and earn your paycheck. You've got, by all mathematics in my head, about 36 weeks beyond that to do something and make a difference in your community. And most of these players simply disappear because they're out with their entourages, with their hoes, with whatever the hell they're out with, doing whatever they do, whether they're out there fishing like Joe Thomas did, or, but we're not hearing from these people during, and now it all comes back to life again. It's NFL season and bam, here we are again. And we're right back where we were last year. What happened to the in-between? And the answer is everyone disappeared. And nobody's fucking serious because nobody's bread was being buttered in the last X number of weeks that the NFL wasn't active. Now is the time. We have to get our ratings up.
Mr. Moohead, I want to ask you, both of you guys, a question. I asked you it earlier. Y'all didn't answer, but I'm asking it again. Do you think NFL players have it better than the 9-to-5ers on the streets? Because if we protested at our job, customer said, stop, boss tells you cut it out or you're fired 9 times out of 10 for that $9 an hour job, you're going to cut it out. But the NFL players, they have the luxury to kneel and go through the controversy and not have to face the same criticism a smaller company would have to face, per se. Do y'all believe that?
I don't believe that monetary is the only consideration, but I think anybody who sees the money that the players are making would obviously say that, yeah, that they have a better go of it than the average American because the salaries are
short term. I would say yes. Long term, it's questionable.
And that's the bottom line. If you were going to be analytical about this, what would you choose? And thing is, would you choose, and I'm not talking about being Tom Brady, because there's one Tom Brady, the guys who are the elite pay guys are not the typical guys on the 53-man roster. If you look at the average of what the bottom guys are making, and then you factor in what the big guys are making, the big guys bring the tide way up. But I mean, even if a guy who's on special teams is making how much, I don't even know what minimum is, 450, 500,000 a year. I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, people can't conceive of that kind of money. The person who's a workaday guy can't even conceive of that. So,
well, the insurance, there was a kicker that was an insurance selling insurance, and then it gets a $350,000 contract to kick for half a season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, from a short-term financial perspective, or as Carl Nassib would say, that it's beneficial financially. However, the long-term health ramifications may not be so good. And if you're willing to leave the world average age 57, or to lose pieces of your brain starting at 36 years of age, Maybe then if we look at the curve, those people who are earning $60,000 a year might feel better about their lives, knowing that they're going to be able to see their families and recognize them when they reach 60 years of age.
Well, not just that, but just joint damage.
Yeah, I mean, it's a price to be paid.
But can you guys agree that Colin Kaepernick's going to make more money than he did in the NFL, and he doesn't have to worry about CTE anymore?
Well, you could make the argument, the fact that maybe they may, that's not a stupid point of view. I mean, if he's as good as Carl Nassib at managing his money, then yes, he should be okay. But again.
Nike signed him to like
dating him communist, so there you go.
He's like, hey, I don't have to play football and worry about the long-term fix anymore.
I hope none of them do. I hope none of them do, and I really do believe that more and more players are leaving the game early, hoping that that's the case. Let's talk about the NFL, shall we? The Cleveland Browns specifically have their home opener against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Desmond Harrison is going to start at left tackle. Surprise, surprise. So that is all, and he's going to have to go against TJ Watt. Good luck. There is a predominant theme, though, that is clouding this Sunday's game. Are you aware of that, gentlemen?
What is that?
The weather. There is a massive storm that is due to hit Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, on Sunday. They are talking about gusts of winds in the 30 to 40 mile an hour range. They're talking about loads of rain that could be 5 to 7 inches of rain. They're talking about, if it were the worst case scenario, the possibility that the game would actually be canceled. Okay? Now, if you look at weather sources right now,
they're not playing in the old Muni Stadium, huh? That thing would be a total swamp.
You couldn't tell if it was the water flowing over or the urine in the old Muni. The problem here is what the weather is showing me is 23 miles an hour, which means gusts probably between 30 and 35. And in that stadium, the swirl will be considerable. Highs of about 62 to 64 degrees. And right now, persistent rain that is going to go from 1 o'clock in the afternoon, believe it or not, all the way through the rest of the day. There is another model that's suggesting that the storm, the big body of the storm, isn't going to hit until the second half of the football game. So as we talk, this is the reason why I like doing analytical programs, because had I not known about this, I might be talking a different way about this Sunday's game, but this is going to change the reality considerably if it comes to pass. Go ahead, Stephen. I know you want to jump.
I just wanted to add something. November 26, 2007, Pittsburgh and the Miami Dolphins played on a Monday Night Football game that dropped 6 inches of rain, and they were ankle deep in water. The game ended in 3-0. So that kind of brings a scary element.
I think that what a lot of people believe is that Pittsburgh's defense isn't as good as it's been in the past, but their offense is really good. And I think what people perceive about Cleveland is that their offense isn't very good, but their defense is improved. Well, if you throw these two things together with all of this rain and all of this wind, we're talking about Antonio Brown, we're talking about downfield football, but with gusts of 30 to 35 mile an hour winds, we're really talking about a football game that's going to be fought in the trenches. And we're going to talk about whether kickers are going to be able to make field goals. We're also talking about the nullification of pass rushes. And, it's no different than when a field gets icy. We remember some of the classic Browns games in which nobody could get footing in the ice and cold to be able to get that first bull charge that's necessary to get a pass rush or the quick step around outside and get the corner. I have a feeling, when you're playing in slop as well, there's no traction. It's going to be easier for the offensive lineman and harder for the defensive lineman. And there's going to be a lot of Mexican standoffs at the line of scrimmage, and that short passes and turnovers could be primary factors in the determination of the outcome of this football game. And it may be radically different than what people would have expected had the weather been normal weather for what should be, the September 10th game. I mean, it's obvious.
It could be another 18-12 score.
Yeah, or September 9th, I'm sorry.
Or November, the November 2007 ended in 3-0, where you're literally running an ankle-deep puddle of water.
Yeah, well, and we've seen it before in Cleveland, where we played Buffalo, and it was this horrible game. I think it was like a game that Mangini won 3-0. That was or 6-3 or something like that, because the weather was just ruined all offensive conditions. The Browns' offense isn't going to be strong, and to be very honest with you, the only way the Browns are going to move the football in this game is by running the football, throwing short passes to Duke Johnson, and maybe the tight ends. Yeah. If this weather is
Chubb and Hyde are going to be the primary reasons the Browns win or lose.
It's going to be one of these games. If the weather is what they're saying it is, it's going to be a game of field position.
Yeah. I would also give the Browns an advantage as far as Tyrod Taylor actually being able to run with the football.
Anything that makes this game a lower scoring game is an advantage to the Cleveland Browns. Make no mistake about that, because the real concern is just getting blown out with Roethlisberger and his wideouts. That is always the concern, the big play of the Steelers. The fact that Le'Veon Bell is not going to be there and that Connor is going to be starting, and that the football team is a little bit amiss about that. The Steelers are not in agreement over this and not settled about this whole thing. On a sloppy field, if they can't get the running game going, we know that Pittsburgh is a less effective team when they don't run the football well. If the Browns can be staunch in bad weather and stop the run, then it's going to force Roethlisberger to throw the football. And then the question is, what mistakes can be made? The fact is, the ball can slip out of a quarterback's hands. Another thing, it can jump out of the hands of a wide receiver fighting for yards after catch because it's slippery. There could be all kinds of turnovers in this game. Field position will be gravely important, and who can get the ball furthest down closer to the red zone to kick field goals in the wind could be very, very important. So this kind of changes some of the dimension of the game. Tyrod Taylor is a short thrower to begin with. Roethlisberger, as a rule of thumb, can do either because he's got the arm to do it. But the big play to Antonio Brown may not be there in that kind of wind, swirl, and rain. It may not be there.
So, Mr. Moohead, would you rather see the game canceled and changed to like the next day, or would you rather just have them play it and tough it out like in the good old days?
This is the nature of football. And the question is, if there's lightning, that's a different story. Obviously, that's going to, then they can't play. But if it's just rain without lightning, they're going to play the football game, and they're not going to cancel the game because it's 23-mile-an-hour winds gusting up to 32, 33 miles an hour. And the accumulation of rain is going to be most noticeable in the second half of the game. How you start out a game like this when the weather conditions are better is going to be gravely important to the Pittsburgh Steelers, because if they can get up and get on top of the Browns early, and by the time the field slops up, the Browns can't come back because we're not a high-powered offense. However, if the weather comes early and it's slop from the beginning, it could be one of those things where a simple turnover at the end of a game in your own territory could determine the outcome of the football game.
What Miami did against Pittsburgh 11 years ago. They got a turnover at the end, kicked basically an extra point, and they barely even made it, but it won in the game 3-0.
And that is the ever-present reality when you're dealing with nature. I'd rather play the game than have it canceled because, again, nobody ever spared anybody the horrible cold and the horrible weather conditions that, I remember my old Browns playing through in the Muni, and those were games that were hard-fought games. And, I watched us go down to defeat on Red Right 88 in weather like that, when we tried a deep pass because we simply couldn't kick field goals because the football was like a rock and didn't go anywhere. we witnessed it all. So, and again, a turnover at the end of the game cost the Cleveland Browns a spot in the Super Bowl. So,
and it presents a challenge too. It presents a challenge for both teams. Let's see what other aces you have in your deck.
And here's the other thing. And from an analysis perspective of this game, because it's the first game, you don't have anything to fall back on. I can tell you how fine a quarterback Ben Roethlisberger is, yada, yada, yada. But I can't tell you is what this year's Steelers are going to look like compared to last year's Steelers. Here's what I do know, though, about the Cleveland Browns. And I often use boxing because I am a boxing historian to talk about a message and I think it's true of all athletics, but there's an old saying in boxing that when a guy becomes a champion, he becomes twice the fighter he was. And the reason is because he's got something to defend. It would be true in every example except Buster Douglas. Let's make that perfectly clear. However, a guy like
but he followed the Mike Tyson.
That's what I'm saying. He doesn't count.
Rules for training.
Yeah. He never trained in his life. He trained for one fight, knocked the guy off, and then he went back to being a lazy fat slob and got himself knocked out by Evander Holyfield. But Holyfield became a vastly better fighter once he became a champion. It reminds me of Azuma Nelson, who was a great fighter, who lost in his first title defense to the great Salvador Sanchez of Mexico. Sanchez. And I don't want to bore you with information. But Sanchez, you have to go all the way back, going back to the 80s here, folks. He defeated Danny Little Red Lopez, who was the most exciting fighter on the planet because Danny Little Red Lopez out of California, he wore a headdress, Indian headdress into the ring every time he fought. And he got knocked down no matter who fought him, and he'd get up and he'd win. Well, he didn't get up from Salvador Sanchez. Sanchez was a gifted young fighter. And Lopez gave Salvador Sanchez his headdress, and that was the passing of the torch. Salvador Sanchez fought Azuma Nelson, a young Azuma Nelson, who went the distance with him, but couldn't win. He fought a great fight, and everybody knew Azuma Nelson was going to be a good fighter. Sanchez tragically died in a traffic accident in Mexico City at a young age. Azuma Nelson fought for the title, won the title, and Azuma Nelson held that title for so many years, and he was tough as nails, and he became a vastly great fighter after he won the title. But getting that first important win is a tough thing. It's a tough thing. And if you've participated in any sports yourself, I was a tennis player and I played a lot of singles matches. When I first started playing tournaments, my legs felt like stilts under me. I was so nervous. And I'd be pushing the ball back and forth, not going for my shots. And I didn't know how to win. Literally didn't know how. And when the nerves finally went away after playing a number of tournaments, I was able, I got my first win in the first round of a tournament. And then, man, I was ready to go. I always said the hardest round for me was the first round, because once I got through the first round, the second and third and fourth rounds were easier for me because my expectations were such that it was like, wow, I'm the underdog. I'm going to keep pushing to get further. Cleveland Browns haven't won anything, folks. They won one game in their last 32. And that is what hangs over every player on this roster. And
that's why a couple of weeks ago, Steven asked us if, or maybe it was a week ago, asked us if this was a must-win game. And to my mind, it absolutely is a must-win game, because that first win is going to wipe away a lot of crap, especially against the Steelers.
That's a tempo early.
Yeah, but you know something? A win in week 2 or week 3 does the same thing. All I'm saying is to expect a win against a team like the Steelers, who's just, always the best team in the division, might be asking too much of a team that doesn't yet know how to win. But there has to be a point where the light goes on. There has to be a point where the Cleveland Browns learn how to play 4 quarters and finish a game without, Corey Coleman dropping a surefire touchdown pass, or without turning the ball over or giving up the essential touchdown at the wrong moment of the game. There has to be somebody who steps up and makes a big play and gets the team to believe they can win. that team will become 3 times better, the Cleveland Browns, once they get that first win. And I don't know who the team's going to be who gets beat. You don't want to be that team, and you don't want it to be early in the season, because if the Browns get a taste of victory early in the season, it could change their fortunes. It could really seriously change their fortunes from being a 2 to 3 win team to possibly being a 7 or 8 game winning season. And, you know, that's the thing that's always hard to guess, is when the light goes on. And nobody's going to care if it rains 5 inches. Nobody's going to care if it's a 28-mile-an-hour wind. If the Cleveland Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 6-3, so be it. That is, and especially coming off of a 5-0 win against the Eagles the week before.
Yeah, we can look at the 5-0 win and how great the press and everybody was feeling after that win, because
the weather was
shit. They just shut out the Eagles.
Yeah, but you know, do it in the regular season. We won all of our preseason games last year. Do it in the regular season just once, you know. And if you do it against the Steelers, and I've said this for the past God knows how many years, if you want the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Browns to continue to be a rivalry, the definition of a rivalry is 2 teams, not 1 team. All right? Kick their ass, beat them, hurt them, you know, punish them.
Yeah.
They have to go home to Pittsburgh having lost to the 1-31 Cleveland Browns and face their home fans without Le'Veon Bell. That's what we want. We want them to start doubting themselves, and we want the Steelers to feel that rivalry as much as our fans feel it. We want that hunger expressed by our players. And that's what makes it a rivalry, is if we really have a chance to win and do win.
If it's 30-mile-an-hour winds followed by a large amount, 5 inches, 6 inches of rain, what strategy do you think the Browns should apply? Just keep running the ball?
You know, something, I think this is where you utilize your guys. You know, first of all, who are the mutters on the team? Leroy Kelly back in the 60s for the Browns in the early 70s was a guy who ran great in the mud. There are, you know, there are historically guys, Marcus Allen, who were great mutters, guys who just, they seem to have their footing when nobody else did. I don't know on this Browns team, you know, Duke Johnson coming out of the backfield, running wheel routes and running over the middle slants against linebackers and that slop. You know, you take advantage of mismatches. You throw jump balls to Josh Gordon, who can go up and get the ball over a shorter defensive back. You have to exploit the small advantages that you have. And I don't know how Carlos Hyde, having played in Arizona, what is he going to know about running in mud? I don't know. And you know, usually the guys with short, choppy steps are the guys who
played in San Francisco, and they do get rain, and they do play on grass. So
yeah, but I mean,
something.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say who's got what. And Chubb, I have no idea whether he has the ability to run on a wet track or not. But that's, you know, the strategy that you follow is you've got to be stout on the defensive line and prevent the running game from getting yardage. That's the first and foremost thing. You've got to force the Steelers to go to the air to beat you, especially in bad weather conditions, because if they're just running downhill like they have in years past, you're screwed. You're not going to have a chance to win that football game. So all the offensively, the best news for Desmond Harrison is if the field's sloppy and TJ Watt is caught up on the slop, and Desmond Harrison can gain a little bit of confidence.
Really chuck him and throw him off balance
and start feeling good about himself and getting some confidence. I mean, these are things that we can exploit and take advantage of. But something is seemingly inert as a punt return. I mean, I don't want Jabril Peppers back. And he's number 1 on the depth chart for returning kickoffs and punts. And I don't understand it. Why not Callaway? Callaway is a much faster player.
Yeah, I got into an argument earlier about whether Peppers or Callaway was first on the depth chart. Other people are saying that it's Callaway now. I'm saying no. I pulled up the clevelandbrowns.com depth chart, and it clearly says Jabril Peppers, punt returner, and kick returner. So,
yeah, and it really. I'm looking in our chat room. Hi to Amsterdam and hi to Modesta Crawford. Hi to Ron Shane. Hi to Mark Jones. How you guys doing? I'm just reading the comments that people are making. Our situation is if TJ Watt gets slowed down against Desmond Harris, and then Myles Garrett's going to get slowed down. Everyone's going to get slowed down. It's going to be a game of interior defense. It's more important that guys who are like Ogunjobi, those are the people, the interior linemen, or the people who are going to have really good games. And, defensively, offensively, you've got to, you're not going to run the ball east-west and slop. You're going to need to, guys like Hyde and Chubb are going to be the workhorses in that situation. And Duke is going to be a receiver out of the backfield. But on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, Agba and Garrett are going to have to earn their stripes stopping the run.
I think Belt and Njoku are going to be used a lot in this game too, if the weather's that bad.
Well, I'll tell you another thing. If it was just a matter of too much water, too much rain, that would be to the Steelers' advantage to the max, because then Roethlisberger has all day to stand back there and throw the ball. But with a 30-mile-an-hour wind howling, it kind of makes things a little different. So, there's a lot of ways this can go. We've already talked about that. If the weather is better, then the Browns are, any way you look at it, the Cleveland Browns have to get off to a start where they don't fall behind. They're not a team that's going to catch up. Tyrod Taylor is not a quarterback who's going to lead you to a lot of points. You're going to need to make special teams plays. You're going to have to get turnovers, and you're going to have to make a big play on special teams to get good field position to help your team score.
I swear to God, if the Browns are down 28-0 and that damn water is ankle high, you better throw Hugh Jackson right in that goddamn puddle.
Hugh has just come out and said that, I think he vows to improve as Browns coach. Yeah, it's like all the talk, all the.
If it's raining, I swear to God, if it's raining and it's a blowout, y'all better throw Hugh Jackson. I mean, literally right in that puddle of water, and let him drown in the lake.
Well, I think that the fact that he's shooting his mouth off, saying I vow to be better. Well, now it's put up or shut up time. You're either going to be better or you're not going to be better. You have a better roster than you had last year. It's not ready for prime time, but it's better than last year. The article on Cleveland.com predicted the Cleveland Browns to win 8 games this year, but when you take coaching into account, Hugh Jackson -3.5. That is literally what the article is about.
Wow.
That having Hugh Jackson will cost them 3 wins this year. Now, when your own shills are talking about this stuff, coaching, I'm reading, subtract 3 wins.
And that's just being nice.
Yeah, I mean,
we could say the same thing about Francona in the playoffs.
Yeah, did you see that Mejia hit 2 home runs in his first game up with San Diego? It's more than fucking Adam Simber's done since he came up and pitched and just shits on the field every time he goes out and throws. You traded Francisco Mejia straight up for Brad Hand, 29-year-old left-hander. That's what you did, Cleveland. It's a horrible trade.
Mr. Hand.
I was just about to ask you if Cleveland won their 80th game yesterday made y'all change y'all's mind about the team, but never mind.
No. I mean, actually,
they're going to get blown out in the first round.
The Indians damn near scored as much as the football game did. But no, I mean, and the guy I hate more than ever is Kipnis. Kipnis will only play when his back against the wall. And he as much as said so in his interview. I get motivated when I'm, it's like, yeah, but you get fat and sassy and lazy for years at a time when you're the man. Fuck you. I'm tired of the guy. I want people that are going to come out and play every day. I love Jose Ramirez and Frankie Lindor. They come out and play baseball every fucking day. And they're awesome young stars of the game. And, there they are every day, taking the extra base, stealing, doing what they have to do to hustle. And there's fat Jason Kipnis. Take him out of the lineup. Now he's hitting the ball. Give him his position back. Give him center field. Stop hitting the ball.
Give him a Viking funeral down the Cuyahoga.
Connolly knows I just cannot. I can't stand the whole thing. As far as the Indians are concerned, Brad Hand for Francisco Mejia, and they're justifying it as part of the win now mode. I say that Josh Donaldson and the vague chance that he could actually do something with the bat is more significant than Brad Hand.
Preach.
I mean, 29-year-old guy who was literally plucked off of waivers 2 years ago. Give me a break. We gave up our number one guy in our system for Brad fucking Hand. And we wonder why, and they'll be thanking us. Kansas City and Chicago and Detroit, they'll all be thanking us as we just keep getting older and we don't have anyone come up from below.
So long term, that's a disaster.
Yeah, look who they brought up. Brandon Barnes, 32 years old. And some other guy was a utility infielder who's 35 years old. That's who they brought up to add to the 40-man roster. Cleveland Indians had no young players to bring up. None. So all we're watching is a very narrow window, and we're going to get beat in the first round of the playoffs. That'll be the end of it because we can't consistently score runs. And we're all impatient hitters because of that idiot Tyvon Berkeley, and we have to continue to watch guys who in the past, before that asshole came on board, who were more patient hitters, become impatient hitters and chasing everything out of the zone. So, I don't know. I got to make a prediction on the Browns game.
Yes.
And boy, I hate having to do this.
Let's all predict the score, and then we'll see who comes the closest. I'm actually going to write it down. I got my paper here. We'll start with
how can I do this when I don't know what the weather's going to be? I'm going to give a one or the other. If the weather
let's get 2K scenario. Bad weather, good weather.
Bad weather, I'm going to say that the Steelers will beat the Browns 17-6. All right?
Wow.
And that the reason it's going to happen is that the Browns will be the ones who make the turnovers and the Steelers will get into the end zone early, and then it will just kind of be a slop fest. All right? If the weather is somehow, if something changes and the weather would be normal weather, I would say that the Steelers would win 27-13. I just don't think that the Cleveland Browns are ready. I think they're going to sneak up on somebody and kick somebody's ass, but it ain't going to be the Steelers. And it ain't going to be in their Browns home opener.
Does Tyrod Taylor play the entire game, yes or no? Because I'm going to write that down.
Yes. There's just no way that they pull him. Yeah, there's no way they pull him. They pull him, and I mean, it's just going to make them look like total dicks, like nobody's running the ship. Of course, he'll be playing.
The only way that they would pull him is if he hurt his throwing hand. And he
obviously, if he got hurt. But I think that
other than that, he's going to play 60 minutes.
Yeah, the tone that the question was asked in, I think, was predicated on, do you think that if we were getting whaled by the Steelers, they're going to yank him and put Baker in? And the answer is no, not now, no.
But Drew Stanley was like, I've never played in it.
No.
Or this is new for me. And then he gets hit out of nowhere.
No, Tyrod Taylor's your starter.
No, Drew Stanton played at Michigan State. He knows what shitty weather is.
Yeah, I just think that the Browns are not ready to take that step. The game is going to come at them hard and fast, and the Steelers know what this rivalry is about, and these Browns players are going to find out very quick, and by the time they find out, they might be down. And that's the thing that you cannot, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't artificially create is the intensity and the speed of week one regular season. You cannot do that.
You got both scores being a 2-score, regardless of the fact. If this goes beyond 2 scores, will that disappoint you? If it's a 3-score game or more?
Oh, sure. I mean, the worse the loss is, the worse we're going to feel about ourselves. But, you know, an L's an L, a W's a W. And we lost 21-18 to the Steelers in the opening week last year. And people thought, hey, maybe better things are on the horizon. And it only got worse from there. One game is one game, and it doesn't paint the whole season when there's 16 games to be played. But you want to be able after, you know, as much as I'm not a fan of this Hard Knocks thing, Hard Knocks could potentially be the greatest thing that happened to the Cleveland Browns, or it could be the greatest humiliation. And it all rests in the balance of how they come out of the gate and whether they're deer in the headlights or whether they're able to play at the speed of regular football season and get the job done. And believe me, if they came out and beat Pittsburgh week 1, then all of that Hard Knocks thing, man, is going to be like, oh, wow. It's like that, you know, we watched about that team and boy, they are up and coming. And then your fortunes tend to change, you know. You get blown out week 1 by 3 or 4 scores against Pittsburgh. It's going to be like, oh, it's all a bunch of fucking hype. Hard Knocks. Yeah.
So my bad weather score would be Browns 11, Pittsburgh 3.
All right.
Wow. Okay.
I think the defense is going to be Le'Veon Bell means no huge breakaway runs. So,
what about good weather?
Good weather. The Steelers.
You're breaking it up.
Be like 19-13.
19-13.
I think they're gonna force a bunch of field goals from Pittsburgh.
But you're saying Pittsburgh would win 19-13?
One cheap score, and then they'll force like 4 or 5 field goals.
You're saying Pittsburgh would win?
Yeah.
Okay. And you, Steven?
If it's bad weather and looks like that Miami 2007 game, same year Appalachian State beat Michigan and Chad Henne. So I'll go with the upset, and I'll ride with it. Cleveland 6, Pittsburgh 3 in bad weather. So I'll give Pittsburgh 1 field goal. Now, if it's good weather, Pittsburgh 28, Browns 17.
All right. And you've written all these scores down, and the reason I went Terry Pluto thinks the Browns are going to win, and you know, all prayerful hosannas while jerking off. I can't. I would be damned if I would agree with Terry.
Yeah, but
Pluto
I don't think he looked at the weather report either. I think that he's thinking it's going to be, you know, like it has been the last 3 days.
Yeah, Terry can make it rain with his hand.
Would you guys laugh if the high winds caused Hugh Jackson to just fall in the puddle of water after the game was over? He goes to shake hands, slips, and falls in the mud.
The wind that comes out of his mouth is greater than anything that's going to swirl in that fucking stadium. I really.
Or his ass.
Huh?
Or his ass.
Yeah, you know,
we could turn him into an instant flamethrower. Just bend him over and get a little lighter going right behind his ass.
You guys win, do the Gatorade shower with the actual puddle of water in the mud. Just
yeah. Well, the great news in all of this is that I'll be around for halftime and post game, so that'll be that, and we start all over again.
By yourself? Are you going to do the show by yourself, or it'll be an invite?
As a rule of thumb, well, the halftime show, there isn't time for invites just because it's just so quick. And then post game, very often I will throw a link in wide open for people if they want to jump in. You know, and those shows can last anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes, depending upon, you know, just what there is to talk about. I'm hoping that the Browns are competitive, and you know, but we start the regular season out and we build from week 1 on. We hope.
Some of your rants, I've seen them go, like, I think your Pittsburgh rant went almost 2 hours, but you had like 2-3 people to hang out though. But
yeah, I mean, sometimes it does. And again, Pittsburgh's a special game. And if we win that special game, that's tremendous, but it's going to take a lot of good fortune for that to happen. Guys, it's 10 after 7. Got to get the hell out of here.
All right.
All right.
All right, guys.
The show today.
All right, man. You take care.
Thank you for the indulgence.
Oh, not at all. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to talk about stuff that's going on. And
last second before you kick us off.
Yep.
Do you think yes or no, do you think what Colin Kaepernick said about police brutality, do you think it came from a sincere place, or do you think this was all money motivation to Colin Kaepernick? Looking at everything.
Oh, I think that I think more than anything, maybe it was just what
regurgitation.
I think it's what he thought, but he didn't maybe choose the right or the best way to express it. And
that's terrible.
I don't think originally anybody would know that it would have had this long a lifespan. So I don't think Colin Kaepernick would be smart enough to be able to say, wow, this is going to really pick up my notoriety. I don't believe that. But I think the more this gets exploited by people, owners, and companies, it's really cynical. It just becomes cynical. So I think everyone knows damn well what they're doing now.
And my opinion is that the first time Kaepernick did the kneeling, it was out of boredom. And he just had it because somebody stuck a microphone in front of his face and asked him a question. He had to come up with something. And that's how this whole.
But do you think it comes from a sincere place, or do you think it's money behind it?
It's regurgitation. He hears all this, all these, asshole race baiters like Al Sharpton and all these other shitbags, criminals, legitimate criminals, and it becomes talking points.
Well, I can't reach inside of a man's mind and come to that kind of a conclusion, but what I would say is that anything that's happening now is all cynical. It's all cynicism, and it's all money, and it's all marketing. So whatever integrity there ever was on either side of the fence was lost a long time ago, in my estimation. So,
all right. Okay.
All right, everybody, thanks for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Go Browns! Come Sunday, let's put out a good effort, and we will see you at halftime. Until then, hasta la vista, pasture heads. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night.